This Skoda Kodiaq breaks new ground for its brand and offers a well-priced, high-quality alternative for buyers in search of a stylish mid-sized SUV with 7-seat versatility. Thoughtful design, a spacious cabin, efficient running costs, and a range of distinctly Skoda, simply clever features are all among this model's attractions. So, will it win over buyers? Let's put this car to the test.
Ever since Skoda introduced its compact Yeti crossover model back in 2009, many have wondered what a full-sized SUV from the Czech brand might be like. Well, this is it, the Kodiaq, a contender that in true Skoda style aims to offer more for less. Here you get up to 7 seats for the same or less money than you'd pay for many SUVs that can only offer space for 5. Volkswagen's Tiguan and upper spec versions of Seat's Attica, for example. Now, we mention these two because they share much with this Skoda, the same engine, the same four-wheel drive system, and much the same stiff, sophisticated MQB chassis. The Kodiaq, though, is a more spacious, family-orientated option that's able to more directly target 7-seat mid-sized SUVs like Nissan's X-Trail and Mitsubishi's Outlander, while offering the kind of quality that you pay much more for in something like a Kia Sorento or a Land Rover Discovery Sport. Now that's important. A big, spacious Skoda wouldn't have been anything especially new, but one delivering much of the kind of premium feel and upmarket technology previously limited to more expensive brands is certainly going to create a lot of customer interest, especially given that an important part of the Kodiaq package lies in levels of infotainment connectivity never previously seen from the marque. Need more convincing? Well, what if we told you it's styled by the guy who did the Bugatti Veyron? It's tough enough to take on proper off-road trails. It can be specified to drive itself in traffic, and it's the lightest and therefore the most efficient car in its class. In short, you get the idea. Skoda certainly hasn't gone at this half-heartedly. But how strong a product have they actually created? Time to find out. If you're approaching a drive in this car hoping for a rewarding time at the wheel, then you're obviously a very optimistic sort of person. Even in the modern era, big, spacious 7-seat SUVs have a reputation for handling with all the dynamic finesse of a channeled ferry, as do big Skodas actually. So it's a pleasant surprise then to find that the Kodiaq is actually quite an agile thing. Certainly by class standards, it's relatively lightweight and rigid chassis, delivering decent body control through the turns. Even more noticeable is the way that the freshly developed 4-link rear suspension setup provides a firmish quality of ride that's a world away from the soft, floaty springing that you get in the Czech brand's similarly priced Superb Estate. But then the underpinnings of this car are also a world away from anything Skoda has previously brought us, and a good deal more advanced than anything direct 7-seat rivals can offer too. The Kodiaq arrives on the same stiff and sophisticated MQB platform used in the other two Volkswagen Group mid-sized SUVs launched just before this was, the Seat Attica and the second-generation Volkswagen Tiguan. The Attica in particular has been hailed as a dynamic class leader, but it's a smaller and lighter thing than this Skoda, so it's unfair to expect that kind of showing here. Nevertheless, as we suggested at the beginning, against the direct segment alternatives like Nissan's X-Trail or Mitsubishi's Outlander, and pricier options like Kia's Sorento, Hyundai's Santa Fe, this Kodiaq emerges as a far more accomplished thing to drive. In fact, only Land Rover's far more expensive Discovery Sport can rival the way that this Czech SUV can push on through the twisty stuff if you're running late on the way back from the school run. It's a pity then that the rather light and over-assisted steering does its best to spoil things, the setup communicating relatively little about what's happening beneath your wheels. In theory, it is possible to do something about this, as response at the helm is one of the things you can change via the drive mode select system that most models feature beyond entry-level trim. This is one of those setups that allows you to alter the throttle response, the steering feel, and on the DSG Auto models, the gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Now, there are three main options: Eco, Normal and Sport. Plus, there's an individual setting if you want to key in your own parameters. 4x4 models get a snow mode too, geared towards providing some extra winter start-off traction. All of this is good to have, but none of the available choices really sort out the steering issue. In fact, to be honest, flipping through the various settings doesn't make a massively noticeable difference to the Kodiaq driving experience at all, unless you've paid extra to complete the whole setup's functionality by adding in Skoda's DCC, Dynamic Chassis Control Adaptive Damping package. Do that and you'll get an extra Drive Mode Select Comfort mode, which really does significantly improve the ride of this car on unsettled surfaces. If you're coming to this model from, say, softly sprung Skoda Superb estate, we think you'll really like this option. We should talk about engines, which are predictably almost exactly the same as those that are used in the Tiguan and the Attica Volkswagen Group sister models we mentioned earlier. Now, Skoda has structured the range so that almost all buyers will end up going for a 150 PS unit, either a 1.4 litre TSI petrol power plant or more likely a 2 litre TDI diesel. In both cases, the performance figures are comparable, rest to 62 miles an hour in around 10 seconds on the way to 123 miles an hour flat out. But of course, the diesel has more pulling power, 340 newton meters as opposed to 250. You would think that that would make a difference if you're planning to do a bit of towing with this car, and sure enough, it's to the DSG 4x4 version of the 2 litre TDI 150 PS model that you'll need to turn if you want the highest braked towing capacity in the range, some 2,300 kilos. Now, with both these mainstream engines, you'll only get a choice of manual or auto transmission if you go for a four-wheel drive model. Front-driven 150 PS variants are auto only, the self-shifting box in question being a new generation 7-speed unit with built-in launch control software. If neither of the two mainstream engines suit, then your dealer will wheel out some other options. There's a feebler entry-level 125 PS version of the 1.4 litre TSI petrol unit at the foot of the lineup, but that variant's very affordable asking price means that it can only be offered with two-wheel drive, manual transmission and a very basic level of trim. You'd do better to ask your dealer about the detuned 115 PS version of the 2 litre TDI diesel, and that's a variant that Skoda launched this car without. All of this, of course, assumes you're on something of a budget. If you're not on a budget when you're buying this car, then the powerful flagship TSI and TDI units, often the priciest part of the range, beckon. Here we're trying the 190 PS version of the 2 litre TDI diesel, a unit capable of 62 miles an hour from rest in 9.1 seconds, and that's a figure the alternative 2 litre TSI 180 PS petrol power plant improves to 8.2 seconds. Both these top-line engines max out at just under 130 mph, and they're only available paired up with DSG Auto transmission and four-wheel drive. Ah yes, four-wheel drive, we should certainly talk about that. Now, buyers in this class don't want fully fledged off-road capability, so Skoda hasn't delivered that here. The Kodiaq's car-like monocoque chassis doesn't offer much in the way of axle articulation, plus there's obviously no low-range gearbox and no way of manually locking the differential for really sticky stuff. On top of that, the ground clearance of mainstream models is a decidedly modest 187 millimeters. The optional 4x4 system on offer is the usual Volkswagen Group on-demand setup, and that cuts in when lack of traction demands it, but it can't be locked into all-wheel drive. Go for it and you get a package of extra electronic driving aids, including that additional Drive Mode Select Snow mode we mentioned earlier. More significantly, you also get this off-road button down by the gear stick that focuses all the car's electronic systems for off-piste use, and it introduces hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. If you've specified the DCC adaptive damping system, then the shock absorbers will also appropriately change their mode of operation when the off-road option is selected. In the unlikely event that you're going to be copying the adventurous families featured in Skoda's advertising and taking to the rough stuff on regular weekend expeditions, well, your dealer will recommend that you equip your car with the underbody protection included in the optional rough road package. Now that comes as standard if you order your Kodiaq in tougher, more outdoorsy looking Scout trim. In this guise, the ground clearance is marginally increased to 194mm, making possible a slightly more promising set of off-road stats. They see the approach angle rated at 22 degrees, the departure angle rated at 23.1 degrees, and the ramp breakover angle set at 19.7 degrees. All well and good, but of course you're far more likely to appreciate the four-wheel drive system's capability throughout the various conditions you'll meet on road. On a slippery morning, you'll notice the extra stability it gives the car through the corners, as the clever software uses a multi-plate clutch to vary the amount of torque being sent to the rear axle. In fact, whatever drive layout you choose for your Kodiaq, you should find it to be an agreeable, family-orientated commuting tool. On the highway, refinement is impressive, and this Skoda is also happily free of the kind of sway and lean that crosswinds can cause at high speeds in some tall-sided cars. In town, that light steering comes into its own, combining with the glassy bodywork to make manoeuvring easier than you'd expect it would be in a vehicle of this size. In other words, it's a thoroughly well-engineered product. It turns out that Skoda's sharp, clean-cut design language translates very well into the kind of purposeful premium look required of a modern full-sized SUV. Now, the Kodiaq's just 40mm longer than the Czech brand's Octavia family hatch, but it looks far larger, with striking styling supposed to convey an impression of protection and strength. Especially here at the front, where the wide three-dimensional radiator grille and raked headlights aim to integrate the look of this car with existing and future Skoda models. Now, the styling was overseen by Bugatti Veyron designer Joseph Carbon, and he hasn't bothered to embellish it with the kind of SUV frippy you'll find in some rivals. So there are no skid plates or aggressive corner air intakes built into this lower grille section. Instead, the emphasis is on the kind of precise, high-tech quality that you notice in the way that this clamshell bonnet frames the top of these double headlamps that are particularly intricate. They incorporate features inspired by traditional Czech crystal glass art, including these outer LED daytime running light strips, and they can, if required, be ordered with the dazzlingly precise beams that mark out full LED technology. Separate fog lamps nestle in beneath them. Move to the side and the SUV image is far more pronounced. It's emphasised by roof rails, strong lower sills and rugged wheel arches with black plastic trim and flattened upper edges that really need to be filled with larger wheel sizes to complete the intended look. We've got the 19-inch rims here. The profile is defined by this powerful upper crease that runs from the headlamps to the tail lamp clusters, and there's a lower swage line further down to give the flanks some shape. The overall proportions reflect the pricing, with the dimensions pitching the size of this car somewhere between a Nissan X-Trail and a Kia Sorento. Razor-sharp detailing also characterises the rear. Here, as at the front, the look is clean, simple and not especially SUV-like. So again, the lower part of the bumper is simple, clean and unadorned. More LED technology is used for the trademark C-shaped rear light design. These lamps stretched into the upper part of the tailgate to try and create an impression of width and substance. Now, the lower rear panel line stretching between the corner fog lights attempts to do the same thing. As usual, of course, what is more important is the stuff you can't see, and in this case, the MQB platform this car shares with slightly smaller Volkswagen Group SUVs like Volkswagen's Tiguan and Seat's Attica. In short, what we've got here is a slick and sensible piece of design embellished by the odd practical flourish. Take the rubber protectors that spring out to guard the edges of the doors when you open them. Then there's our favourite touch, the umbrellas built into the front doors. Now, this feature comes as standard, provided you avoid entry-level trim, and the only other car we know of that replicates it is a Rolls-Royce. Behind the wheel, the Kodiaq design team have managed the difficult feat of delivering the classiest Skoda cabin yet made, yet one that still leaves scope for pricier VW Group sister SUVs like Volkswagen's Tiguan and Audi's Q5 to feel more opulent. The overall look and feel is certainly of a significantly higher quality than that provided by the Czech brand's comparably priced Superb model, the estate version of which quite a few prospective Kodiaq buyers will probably have looked at. And it'll all feel pleasingly upmarket if you've been able to stretch to a more expensive variant equipped like this one with these dark wood grain decorative inlays, piano black trimming at the bottom of the centre stack and lovely stitched leather upholstery. You certainly don't feel like you're in a car that's around, £10,000 cheaper than a comparable Land Rover Discovery Sport. Getting comfortable is straightforward with lots of seat and wheel adjustment, making it easy to find the ideal position in front of this three-spoke wheel, through which you view a pair of large dials fashioned in typical Skoda style with lots of annotation and grey outer rings. The gauges flank a centre information display which brings all the main information you'll need into your line of sight. So things like driving data, phone status, trip computer readouts, a compass and the settings chosen for the navigation and the audio systems. A lot of this is also covered in larger and more graphic detail by this centre dash infotainment monitor, which neatly splits the fascia into driver and passenger segments and is flanked by these bold, vertically upright, chrome-trimmed air vents. Inevitably, the size of this glass-fronted screen varies with the trim level chosen. It's 6.5 inches further down the range, but you can have a smart 8-inch monitor like this one on the plusher models. Either way, you get Skoda's SmartLink system that allows you to access the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto MirrorLink systems to duplicate your phone handset's display onto the monitor and use various apps. This Columbus 8-inch setup is particularly slick, including the navigation and integrated Wi-Fi features that, when they're linked to the 3-year infotainment online option, enable you to make the most of the Czech brand's freshly developed Skoda Connect app. Now, via this, you can keep abreast of the weather, catch up on the news, view Google Earth or Street View images, find local parking spaces, or check fuel prices in your vicinity. Now, if you've lent your Kodiaq out, it's even possible from home to monitor if it's left designated geographical boundaries or if it's being driven at an inappropriately high speed. Big, clear on-screen buttons and logical functionality make this one of the best systems we've used. And we certainly approve the fact that it doesn't try to include climate control functionality, even though a move like that would have got rid of all these buttons and dials further down the centre stack. More switchgear sits in a further panel just below that, and it unfortunately tends, as here, to be infested with blanking plates for extra features you haven't ordered. Still, the little touches more than make up for any minor ergonomic failings. Take this lovely ratcheting centre armrest, or just below the so-called jumbo box, a versatile storage area between the seats, including a removable element featuring a tray on one side and coin and cup holders on the other. There are plenty of other storage areas around the front of the cabin too, or at least there are, providing you avoid entry-level trim. Disappointment at the way the size of the main glove box is compromised by all the media equipment expected to accommodate is quickly tempered when you realise that a second glove box is concealed behind this trim panel just above. There's also a small storage box by the driver's right knee. There's a windscreen clip for parking tickets. There's a side net in the passenger footwell, an overhead sunglasses compartment and decently sized fabric-lined door bins that are big enough to hold a 1-litre bottle. There's also this neat covered tray in front of the gear stick that incorporates a USB port, an aux-in point and a 12-volt socket, and can optionally contain this wireless phone charging pad. Plus, an optional convenience pack provides storage compartments under the front seats. Enough on what it's like in the front of this Kodiaq. Let's check out the rear, accessed through these wide opening doors. Now, this second row bench features all the versatility you'd want from this kind of 7-seat SUV. So the backrest reclines for greater comfort on longer journeys, and the base slides back and forward by up to 180 millimetres. Even with it fully back, there's nothing like the legroom you'd find in a comparably priced Skoda Superb estate, but with up to 104mm stretch-out room available, a couple of lanky occupants will still probably be more than satisfied, although you don't get as much elbow room as you would in slightly wider class contenders like Kia's Sorento and Hyundai Santa Fe. Which means that those rivals will be a touch more accommodating if it becomes necessary to take 3 adults back here. Now, in a Kodiaq, things aren't helped in this regard by this raised centre transmission tunnel, although it isn't as prominent as some we've seen in this class. Overall, a trio of grown-up folk just about be accommodated without too many spatial compromises. And that's helped by the way that the boxy bodywork delivers plenty of headroom. So there are centre air vents above a small storage tray and a 12-volt socket, Isofix child seat fastenings for the tow outer seats, while the fold-out centre armrest distinguishes itself by offering no fewer than 3 cup holders. So, what's it like in the third row? That's assuming, of course, you want space for up to 6 or 7 folk. 5-seat only Kodiaq models are available further down the range if you don't. Now, gaining access to the very rear of the car requires you to pull up these latches on the second row seat shoulders. Now, this ought to be a one-handed pull and push forward operation, but unfortunately, so stiff are these latches that 2 hands are actually needed to get the job done. Once the seat has moved, though, there's just enough of a gap for kids or moderately athletic adults to jump in the very back. Now, back here, you're quickly reminded that this is an SUV, not an MPV. Now, if you're an adult, unless you've got extremely accommodating middle row passengers who've slid their seats right forward, you'll find your legroom is pretty restricted. Nor has Skoda compensated by copying rivals who've designed third row seating that's slightly raised so occupants can have a better view of the road ahead. The brand will point out that these pews are only really designed for kids, and we would agree before asking why, if that is the case, the designers haven't fitted these chairs out with the Isofix child seat fastenings that parents will need. To be fair to Skoda, I suppose most rival brand models make the same mistake. Overall, though, the space back here isn't really any more restricted than it would be in any other mid-sized SUV of this kind, and uncomplaining adults joining you for short journeys will probably be quite glad of it. Small storage areas are provided either side. The left-hand one features a cup holder, and the right-hand one includes a 12-volt socket. So let's finish by heading back to the tailgate, pausing on the way to notice another of Skoda's trumpeted so-called Simply Clever touches, this ice scraper that's built into the fuel filler cap. Now, at the back, the hatch can be specified to raise electrically, and as a further option, you can pay extra for a virtual pedal feature, allow you to raise it with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper. And that is something that'll come in useful if key in pocket you're approaching the car laden down with bags. With the tailgate raised, a huge aperture is revealed, complete with a usefully low loading sill. Even better news if you've gone for a 7-seat variant like this one and you've got all 3 rows upright is that there's still space behind the rearmost seat backs for more than a couple of plastic shopping bags. 270 litres of capacity to be exact, and that's about the same as you'd get in the boot of a Super Mini. To give you some class perspective, with 7 seats in place, a rival Land Rover Discovery Sport offers just 194 litres of cargo space. Most of the time, owners of 7-seat Kodiaq models are probably going to be using their cars with these rearmost seats folded into the floor, and that's an action easy and simple to complete. In which case there's 630 litres of space on offer with the middle row sensibly positioned like this. Then you increase that figure to 765 litres if you push the bench right forward, or reduce it down to 560 litres if you pull it right back. For reference, a 5-seat model offers a 720 litre boot. Now, whatever variant you go for, you'll find that Skoda provides an adjustable height boot floor, but its functionality is severely compromised if, as we would advise, you specify the space saver spare wheel that we've got here. We do, though, like the way that even with that in place, you can position the boot floor vertically, and that will stop loose items from sliding forward when only 2 seating rows are in place. Stretchy net can be clipped into place to also help in that regard. Other useful cargo area features include the way that you can store the tonneau cover beneath the boot floor, and yes, even with the spare wheel fitted. There are also fold-out hooks on the sidewalls, and further up the range you get this neat clip-out self-charging LED torch. Now, if you need to accommodate longer items, the 40-20-40 split folding functionality of the second row seatbacks will be welcome, allowing you to push through longer items like skis without disturbing a couple of rear-seated passengers. Not so good is the fact the important practical feature you'd expect to find in a model of this class is missing here. The cargo sidewall catches that would enable you to flatten the middle row seating without leaving the rear of the car. Now, Skoda has rather meanly decided to make those optional, and we haven't got them here. Which means you have to go around to the side of the car and pull on these straps if you want to push down the second row seat backs. Do that and a class-leadingly large 2,005 litre space is revealed, or 2,065 litres in a 5-seat only model. You'll even have more room to play with if you pay extra for the fold flat front passenger seat, which will allow your Kodiaq to take items up to 2.8 metres in length. In true Skoda style, value is a strong Kodiaq calling card. The overwhelming majority of buyers will spend between £25,000 and £30,000 on a variant with 150 PS, either a 1.4 litre TSI petrol engine or a 2 litre TDI diesel. Petrol power is obviously cheaper, but most will want to find the couple of extra thousand to get the diesel unit. And now with either of these two mainstream power plants, there are 3 choices that it's possible to make with regard to the kind of drive layout and transmission package that you want. There's 2-wheel drive with DSG auto transmission, or for a similar price, you can have 4-wheel drive with manual transmission. The third option entails finding a premium of around £1,500 more for a 4x4 version with a DSG auto gearbox. Those then are the headlines here, but we'll add a little more detail for those that need it. Now, the Kodiaq range is topped and tailed by a selection of minority interest engines that most people will probably ignore. At the very foot of the lineup, around £22,000 will buy you an entry-level front-driven 1.4 litre TSI 125 PS petrol model, but that derivative's appeal is limited by the fact that it's only available in Spartan Base S trim, and it can't be had with 4-wheel drive or 7 seats. You can also ask your dealer about an entry-level diesel derivative using a 115 PS variant of the 2 litre TDI unit. At the other extreme, if you're happy to buy a version of this Skoda priced in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket, then you'll have access to the 2 most powerful models, the 2 litre TSI 180 PS petrol version and the 2 litre TDI 190 PS diesel engine that we're trying here. In both cases, you have to have 4-wheel drive and DSG auto transmission. From a Skoda perspective, the prices being asked here are only a fraction above those required for ownership of the brand's superb estate. That's a model that's only slightly larger inside and much less sophisticated in feel. Kodiaq trim levels, well, they're straightforward. Assuming you avoid the base S model I just mentioned, you'll almost certainly be choosing between either SE or SEL trim. Now, on an SE, a 3rd seating row will cost you an extra £1,000. On an SEL, that feature will come as standard. If you can afford more, then 2 further trim options beckon. Sportline models deliver a more dynamic look, while Scout derivatives emphasise this model's SUV-style off-road credentials. A wide range of options then, at a wide range of prices. So wide, in fact, that at first glance you might think this Skoda could theoretically find itself competing with a whole range of different sized SUVs from different segments. Anything from, say, a plush small crossover to a mid-sized Audi Q5 style premium class SUV. In reality, though, we think it'll find its actual niche quite quickly amongst the relatively few volume brand mid-sized SUVs able to offer the option of 7 seats. Now, start to look carefully at the various segment options in this regard, and this Skoda's value proposition becomes much clearer. if you want a 7-seat model of this sort, priced in the £25,000 to £30,000 bracket, there are actually only 4 options. The Mitsubishi Outlander, SsangYong's Rexton, and the single design that's marketed as either a Nissan X-Trail or a Renault Koleos. Now, with each of these rivals, if you want a diesel engine, it's possible to pay a fraction less than Skoda will ask for a Kodiaq, but you will be compromising in terms of the performance, the equipment, the quality and the efficiency. Perhaps you're wondering why we haven't mentioned the 3 other competitor SUVs that more readily tend to spring to mind when thoughts turn to 7-seat models of this kind: Kia's Sorento, Hyundai's Santa Fe and Land Rover's Discovery Sport. Well, that is because in each case, if you match the proposition precisely against what's available in the Kodiaq lineup, then you'll need a budget of around £35,000 for ownership. There are no petrol engines on offer from these 3 contenders, and in the case of the Kia and the Hyundai, there's no efficient 150 PS diesel option either. In all honesty, probably a closer match to this Skoda can be found in the 7-seat all-space version of Volkswagen's Tiguan. But again, as you might expect, that model sells at a considerable premium over Kodiaq pricing, despite the fact that, under the skin, it offers very little that's different. If, having considered all of that, you conclude that it is a Kodiaq that you really want, well, then you're going to need to know just how generous Skoda has been when it comes to the standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Even entry-level S-Spec gets you 17-inch alloy wheels, black roof rails, front fog lights, LED daytime running lamps, an alarm and powered heated mirrors. Inside at this level there's air conditioning, a leather-bound steering wheel, a trip computer and a 6.5-inch Swing-branded infotainment display via which you access a DAB audio system and Bluetooth phone connectivity, along with a SmartLink Plus feature that allows you to connect in your phone via Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Neat touches include an eye scraper built into the fuel filler lid and door edge protectors that spring out to stop you from damaging the edge of the door when you're getting out in tight car parks. Notable omissions that you'll have to pay extra for include a space-saver spare wheel and front seat lumbar support. As we've already said, though, almost all Kodiaq models will be sold fitted out with either SE or SEL trim. Now, at SE level, you'll find 18-inch rims filling the wheel arches, and other exterior features include automatic headlights with washers, rain-sensing wipers, rear parking sensors, and sunset glass to reduce the glare. Interior SE touches run to dual-zone climate control, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, cruise control, and typical Skoda touch, neat pull-out umbrellas that slide into panels built into the front doors. The infotainment setup, meanwhile, gets an upgrade to Bolero status, which means provision of 4 additional speakers and a clever in-car communication feature that amplifies your voice through the rear speakers, so backseat passengers will more easily be able to hear what the front-seated folk are saying. Talking of seats, we mentioned earlier that you'll need SE trim to at least get the option of 7 of them. At the same time, I touched on the fact that 3 seating rows come as standard on plusher SEL variants. These pricier models are also fitted out with bigger 19-inch wheels, power folding mirrors, Skoda's Kessi keyless entry system, a powered tailgate, and LED technology for the headlamps and the tail lamps, with LEDs additionally used in front fog lamps at turn of the bends. Inside, SEL variants are marked out by Alcantara-trimmed upholstery, heated front seats, and a drive mode select system that allows you to alter the throttle response, the steering feel, and on the DSG Auto models, the gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Plus, at this level, you get a larger 8-inch Columbus centre dash touchscreen that incorporates navigation and in-car Wi-Fi. The navigation Wi-Fi package is an optional feature further down the Kodiaq range, and having it will allow you to get much more from the freshly introduced Skoda Connect media connectivity app that made its debut with this model. Now, if you download this and your car has been fitted with the 3 years infotainment online option, which costs extra with the lower trim levels, you'll be able to access a whole range of web-based services that provide information on things like traffic congestion, fuel prices, parking availability, along with weather forecasts, online news, points of interest services, and access to Google Earth and Google Street View images. Plus, via an incorporated Care Connect remote access feature, the Skoda Kodiaq setup can also allow you to plan routes on your computer and transfer them into your car. Another thing able to widen the scope of what your Kodiaq can do is the 4x4 system that the majority of likely owners will want. Now, if you have this fitted along with the drive mode select system mentioned earlier, you'll get an extra off-road button by the gear stick. Now, this focuses all of this Skoda's electronic drive systems to suit off-piste use, provides you with an off-road information display on the centre dash infotainment screen, and it activates hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. Plus, the drive mode select system will get a 5th snow setting that helps you to get away more cleanly on really slippery surfaces. Now, if those surfaces are regularly likely to be those of badly maintained, unmade roads, for example, then it's worth ticking the box for the optional rough road package with its underbody protective plates. Having mentioned options, let's cover what's on offer if you'd like to embellish your chosen Kodiaq model with some extra features. Now, we were just talking about the drive mode select system. We'd want to complete the functionality of that setup by adding in DCC, dynamic chassis control adaptive damping, that works via the normal and sport settings and adds in an extra comfort mode that you can select if you want a more cosseting standard of ride. As for other options, well, a lot of the extra cost items you might want added to models fitted with mainstream trim levels are fitted to the Kodiaq variant that we're trying here. This features the top-of-the-range Edition spec the car was originally launched with. Now, we're thinking here of things like black leather upholstery, powered front seats, an upgraded colour maxi dot screen for the instrument binnacle, and the wireless phone charging and phone box option that boosts your smartphone signal and gives you a charging pad to top up its battery. Other niceties we'd want to look at include special ambient cabin lighting, a huge panoramic sunroof, tri-zone climate control, illuminated vanity mirrors, and a virtual pedal addition for the powered tailgate that allow you to open it with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper. Also tempting is the upgraded 10-speaker 575-watt Canton sound system and the Media Command app that allows phones and tablets to connect into and control the infotainment system. Now, if you want the ultimate in infotainment capability, though, you can add in an optional LTE module that facilitates high-speed online access. Or go for an even more advanced version of the top Columbus setup, which has a larger 9.2-inch screen, a 64GB jukebox flash memory, and a DVD player. On to practical touches. Remember, you're going to need to pay extra for a spare wheel, and an adjustable height boot floor costs extra at the bottom of the range. We'd particularly want the fold flat front passenger seat that allows you to more easily carry really long items like surfboards and kayaks, and the remote catches in the boot area that make it easier to fold down the rear seats. If you want to go further, cold mornings will be made more bearable by a heated steering wheel, heated seats front and rear, heated windscreen, and heated windscreen washer nozzles. There's a kids pack, and that comes with sun blinds and a control, allows the driver to disable the rear electric window switches. And there's also a convenience pack, and that will give you storage compartments under the front seats. Plus, you can also specify textile carpet mats and build folding picnic tables and tablet holders into the front seat backs. Now, those tablets can be charged via extra cost second row 230 volt and USB sockets. There's also the option of a partition net screen separating the second seating row from the cargo area, and roller blinds for the rear side windows. In addition, your dealer can, of course, guide you through the usual roof rail options, and there are carriers for things like bikes and roof boxes. Anyone looking to tow with this Skoda will want the powered fold-out tow bar too. Go for that, and you'll also want the brilliant trailer assist feature via which you can manoeuvre your Kodiaq using the mirror adjustment switch as it steers itself to park wherever you're towing. If we were regular towers, that feature alone might well sell us this car. Talking of manoeuvring, there's plenty in this regard to help non-towing Kodiaq owners too. A manoeuvre assist feature will brake as soon as an obstacle is detected behind the vehicle. This setup's controlled using an enhanced function of the rear parking sensors. There's an optional area view package using a system of surround cameras that delivers virtual, top-down and 180-degree images on the centre dash screen. Front parking sensors are also available, and as usual with pricey Skodas, there's the option of a park assist system that'll automatically steer you into spaces. As for aesthetics, well, if you really care about the exterior look and feel of your Kodiaq, then you'll be target market for the Sportline and Scout trim levels we mentioned earlier. If all you want to do is embellish the appearance of a more mainstream variant, though, various options are available to you. There's a range of different alloy wheel designs. These 19-inch tri-glav rims are particularly attractive, and you'll probably want one of the optional metallic paint colours too. There's also a chrome package that adds a silver finish to the window surrounds and the roof rails. As for the cabin, well, black decorative inserts can be added around the dash, and you can also specify aluminium pedals if you want them. On to safety. No really sophisticated new model these days now comes without some sort of autonomous braking system, and sure enough, every Kodiaq variant features the Volkswagen Group's effective front assist system. Now, this setup scans the road ahead as you drive for potential collision hazards and incorporates a city emergency brake feature that deals with the specific requirements of urban speeds of up to 21 miles an hour. Now, if the radar detects something you might be likely to hit, then you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or well, perhaps you aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be activated to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now, the system also includes a pedestrian monitor, and that specifically searches for pedestrians who might be just about to step out in front of you. Other sophisticated standard safety features include an award-winning automatic post-collision braking system that automatically brakes the car down to 6 miles an hour after a collision. So if, say, someone hits you and understandably you go to pieces, the car will sort itself out. And across the range on DSG auto models, Kodiaq buyers can specify a driver alert setup that will monitor driving reactions for drowsiness, prompting you to stop for restorative coffee if lethargy is detected. All versions of this Skoda also get an included Care Connect eCall emergency assistance feature. Now, it's part of the Skoda Connect app, and it kicks in with the airbags deploy, alerting the emergency services to your exact GPS location. Plus, it can also work via the provided roof-mounted SOS button in the car. These features are all in addition to all the normal safety kit you'd these days expect on any large family car. So every version of this Skoda has twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a driver's knee bag, as well as the usual traction and stability control systems, along with ABS brakes featuring brake assist to help in emergency stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard flashes. There's also a tyre pressure monitoring system, hill hold control to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and a pair of ISOFIX child seat mounts in the middle bench. If you want to go further, then various safety options beckon. Rear side airbags and an ISOFIX attachment on the front passenger seat, for example, or the light assist with high beam control system that'll automatically dip your headlights at night to avoid dazzling other vehicles. As for other features, well, blind spot detect works on the move to alert you if you're just about to dangerously pull out to overtake. Travel assist with traffic light recognition, pictures road signs and displays them to you in the car. Rear cross traffic alert warns you of oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a space, and crew protect assist will sense an impending impact before, in a fraction of a second, preparing you to better withstand it by closing the sunroof and any open windows while tensioning the seatbelts. There's also a lane assist feature that'll detect if you're drifting out of your lane at cruising speeds before subtly applying steering to ease you back to where you should be, and adaptive cruise control that automatically keeps you a safe distance behind the car in front on the motorway, remotely speeding you up or slowing you down in tune with the traffic flow. Now, if both these last two elements have been fitted to a DSG automatic version of this Kodiaq, then it'll be possible for the driver to also add a traffic jam assist feature that will allow this Skoda to drive itself in low-speed traffic queues out up to 40 miles an hour, using the lane assist technology to keep in lane. Now, it sounds futuristic, but if you have to regularly commute in stop-and-go traffic, it's a feature you'll really come to depend on. Spacious, mid-sized 7-seat SUVs used to be quite expensive things to run. Some of them still are, though, of course. After all, you won't find many of the Nissan X-Trail or Mitsubishi Outlander models that most closely compete with this car able to record much more than 50 mpg on the combined cycle and under 150 grams per kilometre of CO2. The volume version of this Kodiaq, the 2-litre TDI 150 PS variant, can easily better that, able in its most frugal front-driven DSG Auto form to record 56.5 mpg on the combined cycle and 131 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you go for an all-wheel drive 2-litre TDI 150 PS derivative, then you're looking at 52.3 mpg and 141 grams per kilometre for a manual model, or 49.6 mpg and 149 grams per kilometre for a DSG Auto. To give you some segment perspective, that is only a fraction off the class-leading returns you'd get from a comparable version of a much pricier Land Rover Discovery Sport. If you've decided on the 2-litre TDI engine, there's no real efficiency downside in choosing that in its most potent 190 PS form. And that's the Kodiaq we're trying here, which means that the readings you get from this DSG automatic flagship variant, 49.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 151 grams per kilometre of CO2, look decidedly impressive against those of comparable direct rivals like Kia's Sorento and Hyundai's Santa Fe. Fit those two Korean alternatives with an auto gearbox and you'll go around 5 fewer miles on every gallon, and you'll chug out about 25 grams per kilometre more of CO2. Of course, in these days when it's become fashionable to denigrate diesel engines, not everyone will want a TDI, so it's just as well that Skoda provides an efficient petrol alternative. In this segment, Nissan is the only other brand able to offer a conventional petrol engine, although they might as well not have bothered, since in green pump fuel form, their X-Trail model can't offer the auto transmission and four-wheel drive features that most buyers will want. There are none of those kinds of caveats with Kodiaq ownership. Plus, the mainstream petrol unit being offered is one of the Volkswagen Group's most efficient. It's a 150 PS, 1.4-litre TSI power plant, able to increase its efficiency by cutting 2 of its 4 cylinders at light to medium throttle loads. As a result, a front-driven DSG Auto Kodiaq model equipped with that unit can record 44.8 mpg on the combined cycle and 143 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you go for an all-wheel drive 1.4-litre TSI 150 PS derivative, you're looking at 40.9 mpg and 155 grams per kilometre. That's for a manual model, or 39.8 mpg and 163 grams per kilometre for a DSG Auto model. For completion, let's also cover off the readings from the 2 minority interest TSI petrol units that top and tail the Kodiaq range. The 125 PS 1.4-litre petrol power plant that marks the entry point to the lineup doesn't get the clever cylinder-on-demand technology of the Pokia 150 PS TSI unit, and for that reason it isn't really any cheaper to run, recording 46.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 139 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you're among the very few prospective Kodiaq customers who want to stretch to the top 2-litre TSI 180 PS DSG model, then you'll be looking at 38.2 mpg and 170 grams per kilometre. Will all these quoted figures be really achievable, though, in real-world motoring? Well, in the wake of the Volkswagen Group's Dieselgate fiasco, that is a fair enough question to ask. The answer depends on how many of the driver-orientated efficiency tools you're prepared to use on a regular basis. In cars fitted with the Drive Mode Select vehicle dynamic system, there's an eco setting that softens off the throttle response, and on the DSG Auto models, it gets the gearbox to change up early to optimise economy. This setting also saves fuel by only sending energy to the air conditioning and the power steering when it's actually needed. And you can monitor air conditioning system energy usage via a selectable convenience consumers readout on the centre dash infotainment monitor. Elsewhere on the same display, there's a green score screen that graphically scores your success, or otherwise, in motoring frugality. What else? Well, the relatively low curb weight certainly helps. After all, an entry-level petrol Kodiaq tips the scales at only 1.5 tonnes. We should point out that the TDI diesel models weigh considerably more. The 2-litre TDI 190 PS variant we're trying here weighs in at around 1.8 tonnes, for example. However, that still makes it around 120 to 150 kilos lighter than the Kia and Hyundai alternatives in the segment. Whatever power plant you choose, as you'd expect in this day and age, all models get a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights, for example. And the DSG Auto transmission is equipped with a coasting function, which at cruising speeds will disconnect the gearbox, leaving the engine to idle until you next need it. Like most modern diesels, all the TDI units on offer get a selective catalytic reduction filter to cut down on nitrous oxide, and they've all been designed around the use of a urea-based solution called AdBlue. Now, this is injected into the exhaust gas stream to help clean up the emissions, and the liquid's stored in a 12-litre tank mounted at the rear beneath the boot. This will need topping up as part of regular servicing, and you can monitor its status via the dashboard display. Talking of servicing, the recommended intervals for all engines are based around a 20,000 mile 2-year regime, and you can budget ahead for maintenance costs by taking out a fixed price prepaid servicing plan at point of purchase, and that will cover the first 2 scheduled garage visits. Another financial burden you'll want to plan around is insurance, although the Kodiaq helps here by sitting in lower groups than most of its direct rivals. The cheapest variant to get cover for is the 125 PS 1.4 litre TSI petrol model. That comes with a Group 12E ranking, while the 150 PS petrol variants come in at Group 15E, 16E or 17E, depending on the derivative you're looking at. The top 2-litre TSI 180 PS model is rated at Group 22E. As for the TDI diesel Kodiaqs that most buyers will want, well, the 2-litre TDI 150 PS variants are rated at either Group 17E or 18E, depending on the version you choose. This 2-litre TDI 190 PS derivative comes in at Group 22E. Finally, we should mention residual values, which is an area where Skoda usually performs surprisingly well. And the Kodiaq is not going to upset that form, with industry experts predicting that the volume 2-litre TDI 150 PS diesel model will hold on to at least 50% of its original asking price after the usual 3-year ownership period. And finally, while it's certainly true that other rivals better the 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty that Skoda provides, you can extend that cover to 4 or 5 years by paying extra. Not that you really need to, actually. The brand regularly tops independent consumer satisfaction surveys, so according to real people, there are few more satisfying cars to own. Skoda took its time in expanding its SUV lineup, but what it's delivered with this Kodiaq is a very complete product indeed. Comparably priced rival 7-seat models simply can't compete with the quality, the practicality, the efficiency and the media connectivity on offer here. And even if you compare this Czech contender against considerably more expensive competitors that can offer some or all of these attributes, there are still plenty of things about it that you'll find you can't help liking. There are the obvious things like the efficient engine range and the huge standards of seat folded space. But for us, a lot of the appeal lies in the little detail features. Take the umbrellas in the doors that'll be so welcome when you've set out ill-equipped for a rainy day. Or the way that the audio system amplifies your voice so you don't have to bellow at kids in the very back. And that's before you get to all the useful media connectivity options that larger Volkswagen Group products are now so good at delivering. Of course, you wouldn't expect Skoda to have got everything right at its first go in this segment. The Kodiaq's a very well-mannered thing to drive, but it's not especially rewarding at the wheel, nor though are most of its rivals. And the Czech engineers have got a product here that's probably got a lot more potential for dynamic involvement, thanks to its stiff and sophisticated MQB chassis. A bit more steering feel would transform the handling of this car. That issue, though, isn't likely to affect the buying decision of many prospective purchasers. These people will feel that this is a better all-round package than anything else available in this segment at this price point, and they'll be right. All of which means one thing: if you've a growing family, a sensible budget, and a desire for the style of an SUV, well, the Kodiaq's a car you can't ignore.